Hello and welcome to the final video in the MB Sports Web Tryout Lists video series. In this video we're just going to simply cover off a few of the different security and or list setting options that are available, which you can choose from in order to make sure that only the right people are looking at the page and the people who are looking at the page are seeing the right amount of information. So we're going to go and show some of the different list display settings that are available, which columns can be shown or hidden. Then we're going to look at the tryout list page itself, how you can set a visibility date range to protect people from being able to see it until you're actually ready to show it to them. And then finally, a password protection option, which allows you to challenge people to enter in a password in order to see the list, as well as the ability to change that password to prevent people from seeing the list unless you explicitly want them to be able to see it. So with that, we'll jump right into a demo. So continuing to look at the same example that we've been doing for this entire video series, we've got this novice rep tryout list with basically every possible column of information now showing. And as you can see, we have the group code, jersey, first and last, full names, the position, and also the status showing. So we'll go over how to change these settings in a minute, but the one thing that I'll just point out is that if you have the status showing, the players who have been marked as released do show up in the list, and they will explicitly say they've been released. In addition, you have the opportunity to even indicate what day they were released on, which is a different setting you can turn on and off independently. So this might be too much information to show to the general public without some sort of additional password protection, which we'll also cover in a minute. But to change these different list settings, again, the organization defaults will have been set earlier and were described in the earlier video of the series. But basically, if they need to be adjusted on a team-by-team basis, then you can go to List Settings. And within here, for an individual team, we have the option to choose what is shown on that display page. So we're looking at the group having currently set to show, actually not set because that's the default, but we can show or hide this explicitly. So we can say, well, for the novice rep team, we want to hide that group. Maybe we want to show the code, hide the jerseys, hide the positions, maybe show an initial or nothing for the first name, show initials or nothing for the last name, show or hide the status. Again, we would really recommend not showing the status. And then also, if you are showing the status, if you want to show the date of a player being marked as released. So updating this, we're now going to show basically just the code, which is fine. So we can go back to the tryout list and review it now, and it'll show just codes. So this obviously is very private. There's no way of uniquely identifying any player that's in this list because everybody will only know their own code. Now, administratively, this means that you're going to have to set up codes for each player or allow the system to create codes for each player. And then part of your registration process for the tryout sessions, you will need to give the player or parents the code for that player so that when they come back to review this list later on, they can see if their code is still in the list or not. So same as the normal settings where anybody that's in this list or anybody that has a code that's in this list is invited back to the next session, and anybody that doesn't will have a different set of instructions that they'll need to follow. So that's one way of doing it. However, that does add some administrative overhead because you do need to tell each player individually as part of their registration process what their code is. Now, another option you might want to do is to show the names. So we're going to turn the names back on to full first and last name and not show the code. Now, if you do that, one of the concerns might be whether people who are not trying out for the team would be able to see this list or not. So to address that, then when we add the tryout list page to the menu, we have a number of different options available. So first thing I'll just point out is that you can show or hide this list from specific days, either from or until. So you can have this thing automatically hide once the tryouts are over by setting the visible until date. And you can also not show the tryout list until the date of that first session by having the visible from set. So if neither of these boxes are filled, the tryout list page itself is always available to be looked at, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything on it. It will depend on whether or not you've put your players into the system at the time of this player list page being available in the team menu. So in addition, once the tryout list page is in the menu, regardless of its visibility date range, you can also click this password protection option, which again, you can use this for other things later on in the season, but for the tryout list pages, you can also check off that we want to password protect the tryout list page with whatever the password is. So we can call it session 1 and update. Now what will happen is if I want to view that tryout list page, I'm going to quickly log out here for a second and visit the tryout player list page. It's going to challenge me for a password. So administratively, again, this does add a little bit to it because now what you'll need to do is set the password for the tryout list page, and then as part of the registration process for a tryout session, you'll need to instruct the parents of the players what the password actually is so that later on they can go in and view that page. So but at the same time, it will keep anybody that doesn't know the password won't be able to see the list. Now, in addition, we've heard of associations that take that to another step and say that anybody who has been released from the team shouldn't be able to see the list on an ongoing basis. So they actually change the password on a nightly basis so that only the people who attend the tryout session for that evening would be able to see the players who are on that page. The other thing you can do too is if you do change the password, it immediately invalidates everybody who's trying to visit the page from who doesn't have the current password. So again, if you are making changes to the list with the players, and that 5-minute window for hiding the list isn't long enough, then what you can do is set a password or change the password to something that nobody else knows. And as you're making changes, then they wouldn't be able to see the players who are on that list page until you set the password back to something that people do know, or remove the password altogether if that's what you've got set up for this particular team. So the number of different options, again, it comes down to two different settings. One is whether or not you want to password protect the actual page itself, which would keep out the outside world other than the people who know the password. Or if you want to further customize that by changing the list settings. I just logged me out, so I'm going to log back in. So the list settings pages do allow you to control what is visible on that list to the general public in the first place. Showing names is usually the easiest from an administration standpoint because you're not going to have to explicitly tell people what their codes are or things like that. Even jerseys are somewhat useful if you want to show jerseys instead of names. The things with jerseys, though, is that an astute player or parent would be able to identify another player based on the jersey number and color, whereas the codes would not be individually identifiable to anybody other than the person who knows what their own code is. So those are the different options you have available. And again, we have these options in here because different associations or teams will do things different ways, and we're trying to be as accommodating as possible to any of them.